They referred the question to our committee, and we then investigated the references given by both the pro-fluoridationists and the anti-fluoridationists, discovered they were the same set of references, and when we looked at the original references, we discovered three very important things. One was that the claims of benefit of a fluoride, the 60% reduction of cavities, was not established by any of these studies. And number two, we found that the investigation into the toxic side effects of fluoride had not been done in any way that was acceptable. And number three, we discovered that their estimate of the amount of fluoride in the food chain and the total daily fluoride intake had been measured in 1943 and not since then. So that when you add the amount of fluoride that we now have in the food chain, which comes from food processing with fluoridated water, plus all the fluoridated toothpaste that were not present in 1943, we found that the daily intake of fluoride was far in excess of what was considered optimal.
Mm. You also have to add in the fluoridated mouthwash, which some people
I
swallow.
know, and in the school fluoride programs where they give kids solutions, rather potent solutions of fluoride. And the toothpaste is so highly fluoridated now. There's 1,000 to 1,500 parts per million of fluoride, so that one pea-sized amount of toothpaste brushed into the mouth will result in the absorption of a full day's supply of fluoride, equivalent to a full day's supply of fluoridated water.
Dr. Lee, we seem to have a little difficulty hearing you. Are you on just a regular telephone?
Yes?
Oh, okay.
I'll speak up.
All right, if you would, thank you. I'm just going to ask our audience to appreciate when we do make calls around the world. Sometimes connections are good, sometimes they're not quite as good, so we'll just listen a little more carefully.
Well, we're in the midst of a storm right now.
Okay, well, that certainly could be a factor.
Right.
Let's continue on here. Can you cite, as a physician who was also an academic, any study showing fluoride's value?
No, I cannot. In reviewing all of the old studies of the 40s and 50s, they were done so poorly that they're absolutely worthless. And all the recent studies, say in the last 30 years, not one of them has shown any dental benefit at all. The fact is that children's teeth are better in the United States and in Western Europe, but the improvement in, that is, the decline in kids' cavities, is unrelated to whether the town is fluoridated or not.
Could you please continue?
All right. I was going to say these studies have been confirmed in many studies in Western Europe and in Canada and in Australia and New Zealand, all around the world, wherever there's fluoridated communities. Whenever one compares the incidence of dental caries in children between the fluoridated and the unfluoridated communities, it turns out there is no significant difference whatsoever, and this is admitted even by the pro-fluoridationists now.
Then if you have the evidence showing that we shouldn't be using it, that it's harmful, you also have no studies showing that it's beneficial.
No, not only that, they make claims that it's also beneficial for bones. They argue that since it's beneficial for teeth, which it isn't, they say it must be good for bones. And there have been a series of tests using fluoride for osteoporosis in older women, and there have been now about 9 studies comparing the osteoporosis fractures, the hip fractures that occur in women. They've been comparing fluoridated and unfluoridated communities, and not only does fluoride have no benefit, but the hip fractures have increased from 40 to 80% in the fluoridated areas.
Tell us what other countries have done that the United States has yet to do concerning fluoride.
All of Western Europe, except 1 or 2 test towns in Spain, all of Western Europe has abandoned fluoride as a public health plan. It is not put in the water any place in Western Europe. They all established test cities, and in all cases they found that the benefits did not occur and the toxicity was evident. This has happened all through Western Europe, also in Japan, and also in Australia, where they've reduced the amount of fluoride that is legal. In Japan, it has been reduced to 1/8 of what is allowed in the United States or what is recommended. Instead of 1 milligram per liter, it's less than 15/100ths of a milligram per liter is the upper limit allowed. Here in the United States, it is referred to by the EPA as a toxic contaminant, and they've established a maximum contaminant level, and this is to be reevaluated every 2 years. And if they use the scientific studies that are now present, they will have to lower the maximum contaminant level to the point where fluoridation will be illegal.
Give us an idea
All right.
of why the Public Health Service has not challenged the use of fluoridation.
The Public Health Service, regarding fluoride, seems to be concentrated in a small arm of the Public Health Service, which back in 1943 staked their professional careers on the benefits and safety of fluoride, and it's become bureaucratized, and that any public health official who criticizes fluoride or even hints that perhaps it was an unwise decision, that public official is at risk of losing his career entirely, and this has happened time and time again. Public health officials such as Dr. Gray in British Columbia, who did a study of all the school children in British Columbia, found there was no difference in the kids' teeth. As an example of Dr. Cajon in New Zealand, who did a similar study, whenever they reported these results, they immediately lost their careers. And, for instance, also Dr. Marcus, leading the top scientist at the EPA, who merely pointed out that the studies show this toxicity, and he would recommend an independent review rather than a review within the Public Health Department. He recommended an independent review, and for that he was fired. He was the top scientist. He has now fought this through the courts.
Well, he's one of our panelists today, so we're going to hear from him.
You'll get his
in a
story. But this is what happens. The public health officials who speak out against fluoride are at great risk of losing their career on the spot.
Okay, I want you to hold on. We're going to come back to you in a moment. Now we'll go back over to Dr. Yamianis. Dr. Yamianis, we just heard from Dr. Lee, and he was explaining how Western Europe has pretty much abandoned the use of fluoride. You have been a part of many of the scientific trials that have occurred. What comes out of these trials?
You're talking about trials when the issues are taken before the courts.
Yes.
And the courts decide whether... Basically what happens at these trials is you try to get your top experts on both sides of the issue. It's not like a political campaign because everyone's under oath. Supposedly they're supposed to tell the truth, and if they don't tell the truth, under cross-examination they're grilled very heavily and are forced eventually to tell the truth. In the first court case that I was involved in this country was in 1978 in Pittsburgh. It was determined by a judge who was the not only presiding judge but the administrative judge and president of the Pennsylvania Academy of Sciences at the time, that he ruled he was compellingly convinced that fluoride caused allergic type reactions, genetic damage, and cancer. Then we had another court hearing in Illinois, where the judge again ruled the same way, that the evidence was clear that fluoridation created a threat to the public health. In both of these cases, however, upon going to the Supreme Court, in the case of Pennsylvania, they said they didn't have the jurisdiction to grant relief, even though fluoride was a public health problem, that this should be done through the legislative process, and begged out of that one. In Illinois, unfortunately I have to say this, the court was actually corrupt and said exactly what the judge didn't say. They said that the lower court judge did not say that he was convinced, and the judge said he was convinced in his own. So we asked for a rehearing, and nothing happened. But unfortunately, we have a court system in this country which we have problems with. We have I don't want to get into the politics of it, but in the trial court where we were able to determine by the facts in Pennsylvania, in Illinois, and then again in Texas, where the judge ruled, yes, the evidence, the preponderance of the evidence shows that fluoridation is unsafe and ineffective. However, he himself ruled that the court was not the place, or did not have really the authority that this should be done as a legislative function rather than a judicial function. And then those were the three cases that we had ruled in our side. The one case we had ruled against us was one in South Carolina. In Scotland, however, we went over there to the Scottish court and basically outlawed fluoridation in Scotland based on our evidence.
All right. In the time remaining, I'd like for you to go through the studies that hopefully once and for all will show people why they should not support fluoridation.
Well, one of the studies and one of the statements, actually, it was in the Journal